Hello everyone, welcome to Inconvenient Truths. I'm your host, Jennifer Zeng. Today the CCP announces the date of the much anticipated 20th National Congress of the CCP. So I will talk about the prospect of Xi Jinping's third term, the fatal dilemma he is facing, and why he could become more dangerous after he gains his third term. Then I will talk about the starting point and the decision-making process for the Three Gorges Dam, the world's largest power station. I'm afraid that you haven't heard about this from anywhere else. So please make sure you stick around till the end. Before we start our topics, please make sure that you subscribe to my channel or are still subscribed. Many people have told me they got unsubscribed without their knowledge. If you are subscribed, please like and share my videos and channels to give me a boost. Or go to my website at jenniferzengblog.com to sign up for a membership or make a donation. Now, let's go to our first topic today. The date of the much anticipated 20th National Congress was finally announced today. According to Xinhua, the CCP's 20th National Congress will be held on August 16th in Beijing, and Xi Jinping will be hosting it. It is widely believed that Xi Jinping will have no problem getting his third term at the upcoming 20th National Congress. The problem is, what does that mean to China, to Chinese people, and to the world? So here, I'd like to briefly talk about my thoughts about this. First of all, I'd like to share some insight and surprising information about Xi Jinping that you might have never heard about. According to a reliable internal source, before Xi Jinping became the CCP's head, he actually wanted to become the first democratically elected president of China. He had even sent people to contact an overseas dissident group to express his wish. After he came to power in 2012, it seems that he had tried to do some good things, such as arresting many CCP officials who had done many bad things and abolishing the CCP's notorious labor camp system that had been used to persecute innocent people, especially Falun Gong practitioners who do meditations and follow truth, compassion, tolerance in their daily lives. However, let's say that this taste of power is poisonous. After he had tasted the poison of power, he became addicted to it and somehow started to think that it was the CCP that had given him his power. So to preserve his power, he must save and keep the CCP. So that's why Xi Jinping started to talk about the CCP's members must stay true to their initial heart. And that's why he led CCP leaders to go back to the location where the CCP's first National Congress was held and to worship this little boat on which the CCP's first National Congress was finished in 1921, and to renew their vows and pledges loyalty to the CCP. Since then, we can say that Xi Jinping has been on a totally wrong and evil path. He had seen that the terrible moral decline and corruption of CCP officials in Deng Xiaoping, Jiang Zemin, and Hu Jintao's time, as well as the collusion between top CCP families and Western elites, would lead to the collapse of the CCP, of China and Chinese society. But he didn't know how to fix the problems. So he chose to fight the evil of Deng Xiaoping and Jiang Zemin's time with the evil of Mao Zedong's. But his problem is he never dared to openly oppose the evilness of Deng Xiaoping and Jiang Zemin's times, like why they were evil and how serious the problems really were, nor dared he openly challenge Deng Xiaoping and Jiang Zemin's policies. Just like Xinhua's announcement today, after announcing the date of the CCP's 20th National Congress, the article says that the Congress will hold high the banner of socialism with Chinese characteristics, uphold Marxism-Leninism, Mao Zedong thought, Deng Xiaoping theory, the theory of three representatives, and the scientific outlook on development, and thoroughly implement Xi Jinping's thought on socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era. You see, from Mao Zedong thought to Xi Jinping thought on socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era, not a single CCP leader was missed out in this announcement. And this is the irony of the CCP's thoughts and systems. Although Mao Zedong thought and Deng Xiaoping theory can be 10,000 miles away from each other, they are still put together on the CCP's altar to be worshipped. And that is also the fundamental crisis and the mission impossible for Xi Jinping. He wants to fight the CCP's corruption and immorality with more of the CCP's evilness. And during the process, because he has purged over 1 million CCP officials, he has also created for himself the most formidable enemies and the most horrible hatred inside the CCP that will surely kill him if he loses his power. So this has made Xi Jinping the most dangerous person on this planet for both the Chinese people and the world. To keep his power amongst all these hostile forces, both inside and outside of China, and when the environment both inside and outside China that the CCP is facing is rapidly deteriorating, Xi Jinping has all the reason in the world to wage a war to save his power and himself. That's why the world would enter a more dangerous time after the CCP's 20th National Congress, especially when the CCP has so-called normalized its military exercises or operations in the Taiwan Strait. Exercises can be turned into a real war at any time, especially after the world becomes numb to them. Well, that's all I'd like to say on this subject for now. Next, let's move to the Three Gorges Dam. Last week, we talked about the unprecedented heat wave and drought that China is suffering from. Is there a relationship between this unprecedented heat wave and the nearby Three Gorges Dam? Let's check some of the facts and data first. While Chongqing City and other cities are suffering from temperatures as high as 45 degrees Celsius or 113 degrees Fahrenheit, some Chinese netizens found a 20-year-old article that was published in 2002. The article said that the Three Gorges Reservoir would become the world's largest natural air conditioner after it was built and filled with water, and the temperature in Chongqing City would drop by by 4 to 5 degrees Celsius in summer and rise by 3 to 4 degrees Celsius in winter. But it is really that case. The reality is, over the 46 years from 1961 to 2006, Chongqing's annual average temperature as a whole showed a small upward trend, rising by 0.14 degrees Celsius, with a rate of an increase of 0.03 degree every 10 years. And then from 2000 to 2017, Chongqing's temperature rose 0.4 degrees Celsius. So that's 0.24 degree for every 10 years. As the Three Gorges Dam was built in 2003, so we can roughly regard the rise of 0.03 degree every 10 years as the rise before the Three Gorges Dam was built, and the rise of 0.24 degree for every 10 years as the data of the rise after the Three Gorges Dam was built. So from 0.003 degree to 0.24 degree, we can roughly say that the rise of temperature in Chongqing after the Three Gorges Dam was built is 8 times of that before it was built. In this case, the Three Gorges Dam is not an air conditioner after all. Now, let's talk briefly about the history of the Three Gorges Dam to see how experts must serve politics in CCP's China. In 1956, after the CCP's first-generation leader Mao Zedong swam in the Yangtze River, he wrote a famous poem titled Swimming. And the poem ended with these several lines. A bridge will fly to span the north and the south, turning a deep Thames into a thoroughfare. Walls of stones will stand upstream to the west to hold back Wushan's clouds and the rain, till a smooth lake rises in the narrow gorges. The mountain goddess, if she is still there, will marvel at a world so changed. Well, this poem might sound beautiful, but would you believe that the poetic imagination of a CCP leader would actually become the basis for the construction of the Three Gorges Dam? Because Mao had written till a smooth lake rises in the narrow gorges, so a lake must be there so that the mountain goddess would marvel at a world so changed. You know, Mao had another very famous statement which goes like this: to fight with the heaven, earth, and human beings bring us endless happiness. So in the CCP's mind, both heaven, earth, as well as human beings are to be conquered, and conquering them can bring endless happiness. So when Mao wrote in his poem that the mountain goddess will marvel at a world so changed, he was boasting that even the mountain goddess would be amazed and impressed by the CCP's power to conquer everything. So this poem and the thought of conquering nature has thus become the theoretical basis for building the Three Gorges Dam. In 1986, the CCP set up 14 professional groups to study the feasibility of the Three Gorges project. One of the 14 groups was the Ecology and the Environment Group, which was responsible for studying the possible ecological impact of the Three Gorges Dam. The head of the group was Ma Shijun. He is a member. He was a member of the Chinese Academy of Science, and Mr. Hou Yueyu was the expert consultant of this group. And their conclusion was that the Three Gorges project would do more harm than good to the ecology and the environment. But Ma Shijun ended such a sentence saying that many adverse effects can be limited by human measures. But Hou Xueyu strongly disagreed with this. He argued that in the current state of knowledge, many of the ecological impacts of the Three Gorges project were still unknown, so no specific human measures could be proposed, let alone to know how effective they would be. Therefore, he, as well as another expert, Professor Chen Changdu from Peking University, refused to sign their names on the evaluation report. So this is the signature page. The first line was for Hou Xueyu to sign, but the signature column for him was empty. He didn't sign. And this is another signature page. The sixth row was for Professor Chen Changdu. He didn't sign either, so his signature column is empty too. But this report was handed over to the Three Gorges Project Evaluation Leading Group anyway. And in 1990, Pan Jiazheng, deputy head of the Three Gorges Project Evaluation Leading Group and chief technical officer, said at a briefing on the Three Gorges Project evaluation meeting held by the State Council that the ecological impact of the Three Gorges Project should not become a constraint on engineering decisions. And shortly after that, both Ma Shijun and Hou Xueyu died, strangely. Ma Shijun died in a car accident that has not yet been investigated. It seems that nobody is interested in investigating it at all. And Hou Xueyu, who was also a member of the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress, died in Hospital 301, which is a special military hospital, mostly for CCP leaders. So you can say that the two most important scientists who said that the Three Gorges project would do more harm than good to the ecology and environment both died in suspicious circumstances. Then, on August 3rd, 1991, the CCP State Council's Three Gorges Project Review Committee held its third meeting to review and approve the Three Gorges Project evaluation report. Although the conclusion of the ecology and environment group at that time was still that the disadvantages overweighted the advantages, the conclusion of the general report on the environment impact of the Three Gorges project had been changed to the conclusion that the advantages outweigh the disadvantages. On the same day, another ecology and environment group was established, and this group was called Ecology and Environment Group 2. And after only 4 months, and that is in December 1991, this Group 2 submitted their report, which concluded that the Three Gorges project would do more good than harm to the environment. And then, on January 17, 1992, the then Chinese Premier Li Peng approved the Three Gorges project. And from February 20th to 21st, 1992, the then CCP head Jiang Zemin also approved the Three Gorges project. And then on April 3rd, 1992, the CCP's National People's Congress approved the construction of the Three Gorges project on the Yangtze River, and this completed the entire decision-making process. From then on, the Three Gorges project became unstoppable. What I can share here is that I started to work for the Technology and Economics Department of the Development and Research Center of the State Council of China in the summer of 1991. The job of our department was to offer advice and consultance on resource and environmental policies of the CCP's State Council. And in the summer of 1991, the feasibility of the Three Gorges project was still a hotly debated issue in China, but almost all the experts in our department were against the project. One of the experts was even the classmate of Jiang Zemin when they both studied in the former Soviet Union. The tragedy is, in China, experts and scientists can only be the CCP's slaves or decorations, and their opinions never matter. The CCP's political needs are the only things that matter. Well, that's a little bit of the history of the world's largest power station. The CCP has altogether built 51,343 reservoirs in the Yangtze River. If a river is also a form of life, building dams and reservoirs on it is like cutting this life from its waste. How can it survive this kind of damage? So the river will die eventually. Only a river's life is so much longer than that of human beings, so we may not see its immediate death, but it will die all the same. So that's what the CCP has done to the Yangtze River and a lot of other rivers in China. Well, that's all for today. If you haven't, please click the link in the description box and subscribe to Shenyun Creations, a wonderful platform to enjoy the wonderful performances of Shenyun.